caran vidita-vijñānaḥ paraṁ brahmādhigacchati evaṁ vidho brahmacārī vānaprastho yatir gṛhī caran vidita-vijñānaḥ paraṁ brahmādhigacchati. Ladies? Evaṁ vidho brahmacārī vānaprastho yatir gṛhī caran vidita-vijñānaḥ paraṁ brahmādhigacchati
evaṁ vidho brahmacārī
evaṁ vidho brahmacārī
vānaprastho yatir gṛhī
vānaprastho yatir gṛhī
caran vidita-vijñānaḥ
caran vidita-vijñānaḥ
paraṁ brahmādhigacchati
paraṁ brahmādhigacchati. Evaṁ vidha, in this way, brahmacārī, whether one is a brahmacārī, vānaprastha, or one is in the vānaprastha ashram, yatir, or in the sannyas ashram, gṛhī, or in the grihastha ashram, caran, by practice of self-realization and understanding of the absolute truth. Vidita-vijñānaḥ, fully conversant with the science of the absolute truth. Paraṁ, the supreme, Brahma, the absolute truth. Adhigacchati, one can understand. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. By practicing in this way, whether one be in the brahmacārī ashram, grihastha ashram, vānaprastha ashram, or sannyas ashram, one must always realize the all-pervading presence of the Supreme Lord, for in this way it is possible to understand the absolute truth. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. This is the beginning of self-realization. One must first understand how Brahman is present everywhere and how he is acting. This education is called brahmacārī and is the real concern of human life. Without such knowledge, one cannot claim to be a human being. Rather, he remains in the animal kingdom. As it is said, sa eva go gṛhā. Without such knowledge, one is no better than a cow or an ass. Repeating the translation, by practicing in this way, whether one be in the brahmacārī ashram, grihastha ashram, vānaprastha ashram, or sannyas ashram, one must always realize the all-pervading presence of the Supreme Lord, for in this way it is possible to understand the absolute truth. Hare Krishna. Jai Srila Prabhupada. I actually chose this verse because it does describe how I feel about joining the Hare Krishna movement. And since I do feel like I'm not a philosopher or scholar, the only thing I can share is to attempt to glorify Srila Prabhupada. But first, I just want to mention that today is Shivaratri, and although we worship Krishna, Lord Shiva is the utmost Vaishnava. He is compared to yogurt, and Krishna is compared to milk. So there's really no difference, yet there is a difference. It's, slight difference, but it's different. So the point is that we offer total respect to Lord Shiva, but we worship Lord Krishna. So because I, as an ordinary rank and file devotee, I was very blessed by getting more association with Srila Prabhupada than most devotees. And that was because I came to the 1975 Gaur Purnim festival and didn't want to go back to America when the festival was over. And I managed to convince the authorities that it was okay that I stay. It really actually wasn't okay, because I had been composing or transcribing, not transcribing, but typesetting Prabhupada's books. And it was a very important service. And it was that summer where Prabhupada got so upset with the devotees not keeping up with his translating and publishing enough, keeping up with him, that there was that huge marathon where they produced 17 books in 2 months. And it wasn't the 17 books of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Sometimes people think that, but it was several volumes, maybe something like 3 or 4 volumes of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and then the rest of the books were Chaitanya Charitamrita. In any case, I pulled a fast one and was able to stay in India. And a part of it was because Srila Prabhupada was such an amazing, amazing personality that I just wanted to be near him. I mean, I didn't really follow him around exactly, but something like that. But because we are in Maharashtra and the main temple was the Juhu Beach temple, I wanted to share. I just apologize again if anybody is upset that this is not your normal Bhagavatam class. I just apologize again. Okay, but I wanted to share what memories I have of Srila Prabhupada in Mumbai. So I made an outline. Okay, so one thing that happened was we were singing the prayer. Can't remember the one that we sing for Guru Puja, but Prabhupada stopped the kirtan, as far as I remember, and asked us if we knew what it meant. And I'm sure he went over several of the words, but the one that I remember the most is Dibya Gyan. He said this was the most, what I remember. My memory is not so great, but he said that this was the most important words, because we get knowledge from the Guru. And this is very important to actually understand the Guru. As we noted in this verse, we don't want to be in the animal species. We want to rise above and become human beings. And, more than that, we want to become devotees of Krishna. Okay, another thing I remember that happened was there was a group of local people who, well, I guess they were devotees of Krishna, because they requested to do 24-hour kirtan in our temple. And they had been doing it in other places. I think they just did it once a year, or maybe it was once a month. Maybe it was once a month. And they asked to do it in our temple. And everybody who participated in this stayed in the temple and chanted for 24 hours. It wasn't like somebody chanted for a few hours and somebody else chanted the next part. They all chanted for 24 hours. So after that was over, then Prabhupada said, my devotees can't do this. And we were like, oh yes, oh yeah, we can. Well, we couldn't. But what we did was we broke it up into segments. Somebody did 2 hours, somebody else did 2 hours, like that. And that was a big accomplishment for us at that time. But Prabhupada knew better than we did. Well, one important thing that happened in Juhu Temple was that Prabhupada had open darshan. Wherever Srila Prabhupada was in India, very, very different than in America. He had open darshan every day at a certain time. Usually it was like 5 to 6. And this is just the opposite. Anybody who was just seeing Srila Prabhupada when he would come to America, very restricted how much darshan we got of Srila Prabhupada. Maybe when he went off for his morning walk or came back from his morning walk. Unless you're a man, then you could go on the morning walk, I suppose. But and then we'd see him for class. I mean, classes were always completely ecstatic when Prabhupada was at a temple, he always gave the class. And, if he did initiations or something special, we would be there, but it wasn't like we could go into his room. And even the one time that I happened to be in New York Temple, Brooklyn Temple, when Prabhupada arrived, and somehow or other he invited all the devotees to come into his room once he arrived. But I was in a car that broke down on the highway because it was packed so many devotees were in the car. We went over a bump and broke the axle. We were stuck on the Brooklyn Queens Expressway for hours. Came back to the temple and heard all about how Prabhupada let everybody into his room. So anyway, so different in India. Prabhupada was very at home in India, and he, just had open door darshan. Anybody could go. However, I joined the movement in Boston in January of 1971. I moved around several times. By the time I had been in the movement 6 months, I was already like in my 4th temple. It's a whole story. If you want to read details, I wrote a book called Srila Prabhupada is Coming. But I have one copy available. But anyway, my first temple, so the temple president in Washington, D.C., where I was living when I got initiated, when Prabhupada arrived in New York, and everybody from the East Coast and Canada, we all came to see Srila Prabhupada. Well, my temple president had this philosophy that we shouldn't gawk at the spiritual master. The word gawk is kind of a special, it's just the perfect description, that we don't want to just stare at the spiritual master, just look at him, and we want to serve. His point was, our position as servant, we should be serving. So he let us go to New York to get initiated, and Prabhupada was already in New York. And so I'm getting off track here, but anyway, the point is that when I was in Mumbai and Prabhupada is having these darshans, I just would do service because I felt like, what my first, wasn't my first temple president, but significant influence on my life, that we should just do service. But one day, there's a nice devotee who's here right now named Sarva Mangala, and she said to me, I'm going to see Srila Prabhupada. You want to come with me? And I was like, okay. And so Prabhupada's quarters were on the top floor of one of the buildings that was existing when Prabhupada bought the property. It had like 6 apartment buildings. And Prabhupada was on the top floor of one of the buildings. So we could both go into Prabhupada's room, and some guests were there with a devotee. And as soon as we came in, the devotee said, we're leaving. And he, the guests left with the devotee. And it was just Sarva and me. So we were unsure if we should be there, 2 ladies alone with Prabhupada. And he said, unless you have some questions, and we both go, no. Actually, we did. But we both said no. We pay obeisances. And as soon as we get up from paying obeisance, we both start talking at the same time because we did have questions. But Sarva went first. And her question was something like this. Srila Prabhupada, the other day, you said that brahmacārī, sannyasi's business is to preach. Brahmacāri's service is to assist the sannyasis. And grīhasta's business, I'm not remembering what he said, actually. I guess he just said it's to serve. I don't remember exactly. And so Sarva said, well, what about the brahmacharinis? Oh, I think he said grīhasta's business is to do deity worship. That's what it was. And so Sarva said, well, can the ladies also do deity worship? Actually, at that time, it was questionable. I mean, some people were saying that there was only like 6 or 7 ladies there, and we were all Western ladies, brahmacharinis, and so she was worried that they were going to take this service away. We were doing a lot of deity worship, like most of it. And so Srila Prabhupada said, oh no, they can also do. So she was completely relieved. And then I asked a question. I have to explain that I was, I think, 29 years old at this time. This was 1975, and I was 29. So I had heard that Srila Prabhupada said that marriage after 30 is not pleasing because you're set in your ways. And so I was thinking, I'm going to just be a brahmacārī forever. And I had heard that Prabhupada had given a deity to, well, two different ladies, at two different circumstances even. But I was thinking, I want a deity too. But I just couldn't ask a question in the first person. I couldn't say, I want to know. I had to say it in an indirect way. And so I just said, can devotees have their own deities? And Prabhupada's answer was no, which is interesting. But I understand it was for time and circumstance, because grihastas are always supposed to make their house into a temple. And so, of course, it should have deities. But I really took this to heart, I think, in my life, because although I do have gṛhī deities in my home, I barely serve them. I don't know how they tolerate me. It's a small gṛhī about this big that my late husband, Ganagami Prabhu, had gotten somewhere. I don't even know. And he is in my home, but really my whole life is centered around doing deity worship, involved in different ways, in the temple where I mostly live, which is Alachua, Florida. I should have introduced myself, but yeah, in case anybody, because some of you don't know me perhaps, and so Mahamaya, Devi Dasi. Actually, I request that when devotees give class that they introduce themselves. I think it's appropriate. Okay, so anyway, that was my first time going to darshan in Prabhupada's room. But let's see, was there anything else? Just trying to see. Well, so that was, sorry, that was 1975. But again, I lived in Mumbai in 1977. But, I saw Srila Prabhupada mostly in Mayapur. So I want to share about darshans in Mayapur. So, okay, no, let me finish it up with Mumbai. So there was maybe, like I said, 6 or 7 ladies, foreign ladies living in Mumbai, and Jai Pataka Maharaj came and said, I need people to fill these different services. And he had a whole list. There was hardly anybody living in Mayapur at the time, maybe 100 devotees or so. But he had a lot of positions that needed filled. And so I was saying, I want to go and be the secretary, but another devotee who had been in Mumbai longer said, I want to go and be a teacher. And so she was given preference. But only at the last minute, she changed her mind. And so it came to me. And so I was given a ticket to go by train to Calcutta. And then from there, I met a devotee in the Calcutta temple, and we went to Mayapur together. And I was Jai Pataka Maharaj's secretary for some time. And, but I just wanted to tell you, when Prabhupada came to, this all happened in November of 1975. Prabhupada came every year to the Govardhan festival, but he came very, very early. Govardhan festival usually was in March. A couple of times I think Govardhan has been in February, but, or at least the Govardhan festival started in February. But he came to Mayapur in January of 76. Within a week of his arriving, his younger sister, who we called Pishima, came also. And someone said, well, Pishima needs someone to help her, a personal servant, who would like to do it. And I thought it was going to be a huge competition among the 6 of us ladies who were there. Thought we'd be vying to be the one. And somehow I was the only one who wanted to do it. So it came to me by default. And that was like such a blessing in my life, because Pishima was such a wonderful person, such a wonderful devotee. And I proofread for Back to Godhead, and I just proofread the March-April issue. And the lead article, the cover article, is Pishima. And so many details. Satyaraj wrote the article. He got so many details way beyond what I ever knew, like the names of her kids and things like that. I mean, I understood she had 9 children. Apparently 2 of them were adopted. Well, not adopted exactly, but her niece and nephew or something like that. They were relatives, but she still, took care of 9 children, raised 9 children. And she was such a positive person. And one day Prabhupada told us that she was not only his sister, but his god sister. She never told us that she got first initiation from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. She just identified with Bhakti Saranga Swami, who gave her second initiation. Anyway, when Pishima came to Mayapur, she would sometimes come to Bhagavatam class, even though she spoke 2 words of English: water and wash. She was super clean. She could see contamination where nobody else could. She'd douse everybody with water. One of my services in serving her was to carry her, it's kind of a large bottle of Ganga water. And at least bead bags would get wet, minimum. Sometimes people get doused from head to toe. But anyway, she wanted to go to Bhagavatam class sometimes, but she always wanted to go to Prabhupada's evening darshan. So this gave me the perfect excuse. I had to help her up the stairs. She was elderly. She was around 80, which I can relate to because in a few months I'm going to turn 80 myself. So she needed help up the stairs. She usually would try to take up as little room in Prabhupada's quarters as possible, because Prabhupada's quarters was covered with mattresses, which were covered with white sheets, and then bolster pillows. And sometimes she would move the bolster pillows out of the way just to take up less room. And she just wanted to be near Srila Prabhupada. She, like I said, she couldn't understand the conversations. But mostly they were in English. And some of the ones that I remember are, Sudama Maharaj arrived in Mayapur, and he stood in the doorway of Prabhupada's darshan room, but in the back doorway that led to the back veranda. Everybody came in the front veranda. So he holds up a madranga high, gets everybody's attention, and then he lets go and drops the madranga. And we all gasped, like, what? And then he picked it up and showed Srila Prabhupada, it's not broken. It was the first Balaram madranga that's made from fiberglass. And it just bounced. I mean, we all felt like it was a little bit uncouth, to disrespect the madranga, but he was really trying to make a point. We now have a madranga that won't break when you drop it. And because previously it's only clay, and it's pretty unforgiving. Drop it once, it's cracked, it's broken. So Prabhupada took, his hand to the madranga, and then he just played a little bit, and then handed it back to Sudama and said kirtan. And so the whole rest of that darshan was just kirtan with the new madranga. That was one memorable event. Another time, it was the Bengali grihastas. So let me explain that Prabhupada didn't really give class in Bengali. He would give class in English. And then, anyway, he would get someone to translate, but pretty much after class was over. So it was like a summation. And the ladies wouldn't even be in Bhagavatam class, the Bengali ladies. They would be in the kitchen preparing breakfast and probably even preparing for lunch. I don't know. But Krishna Seva was, their Krishna Seva was kitchen Seva. So, Prabhupada's, sorry, in my old age, I lose track of what story I'm telling by telling story within story. Okay, I was talking about Prabhupada giving Bhagavatam, right? So, okay, I really forget which story I was. Oh, okay, now I remember about the Bengali couples. The Grihasta couples, like I said, they really didn't get to see Srila Prabhupada all that much or understand what he's saying, but a whole bunch of them, maybe, 6, 7 Grihasta couples came to Darshan one night, and they had some prasadam to give to Srila Prabhupada. And what it was gur badam. So we were growing sugarcane in the fields around Mayapur. And then there was equipment that was kind of shared by everybody in that area. The facility to boil the sugarcane juice, first to extract the sugarcane juice from the sugarcane and then boil it down. And they did it all right in the fields. And then what they did was make gur badam, which is peanuts and gur. And the first batch they brought to Srila Prabhupada. And what was so exciting about that darshan was just seeing the exchange with these Grihasta devotees. It was all in Bengali. I couldn't understand the words, but I could feel the love between the appreciation that devotees had for Prabhupada and Prabhupada, bestowing so much love on everyone at that darshan. What else? Okay, the one of the more personal episodes of going to darshan was that Prabhupada would tell us to leave when Arti would start. The temple at that time was the ground floor of the Lotus building, and the temple was ground floor, and Prabhupada's quarters were on the second floor. So we could hear when Arti was starting. We could hear the bell, and Prabhupada would tell us to leave and go to Arti. But if there was somebody there, a guest, then the darshan would continue. So he had told us to leave. I went down one flight, and there was Vrindavan Biharini, who was cooking the evening offering for the deities. And she stopped me and said, well, what did Prabhupada say tonight in the darshan? So I'm standing there talking to her, telling her what I remembered. And all of a sudden, Bhavananda, who was one of the co-directors at the time, he comes down the stairs and said, Mahamaya, I'm looking for you. The FRO man, the Foreign Registration Office man from Krishna Nagar, he's asking for the names of all the foreign devotees. He wants their passport numbers and all that information. And I was the temple secretary, so I did have a list, but it wasn't up to date. So I tell Bhavananda, I can get it up to date in the morning. And he goes, okay, go back upstairs and tell Srila Prabhupada that you have this list and it'll be available tomorrow. So I was a little hesitant, to go into Prabhupada's room because he had told us to leave. But I had to do that, what Bhavananda told me. So when I went into Prabhupada's room, I just paid my obeisances and didn't sit down comfortably, just sat on my knees right by the door. So when the conversation came to a break, Prabhupada turned to me. I don't know if he even said anything, but I had to explain my presence there. And so I just said, I have the list of foreign devotees and all their information, and it'll be ready in the morning. So the FRO man, in my mind, I really don't remember what he looked like, but I have this picture in my mind that he had a little mustache and it was glaring at me. Well, he definitely was glaring at me. But as far as how he looked, I don't know exactly. But he just looked at me like, who do you think you are? And then he turned to Prabhupada and said, who is she? And at that point, I was like, what is Prabhupada going to say? I mean, in Iskcon, ladies are not exactly known. And we're all like wanting to be, Prabhupada to notice us and dance exuberantly and everything so that we would be seen. But I didn't know what Prabhupada was going to say. And he just confidently just said, she is the secretary. And I'm telling you, I was so happy that it was like some level of being known. And I was just really, really ecstatic. It just reminded me in the Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, I don't know if you're familiar with this particular pastime, but Satsvarup Maharaj, who wrote the Lilamrita, he didn't go to the very first initiation. He should have and could have, but he didn't go. He felt he should just do service. He was typing for Prabhupada, and he just felt unworthy or something like that. So the next time he saw Srila Prabhupada, Prabhupada asked him, like, why didn't you come for the initiation? And Prabhupada said this amazing thing. He said, if you love me, I love you. Maybe it was the other way around, but I just remember the description that Satsvarup says how he went out of that darshan with Prabhupada and just danced down the streets of New York. And so that's kind of how I felt when Srila Prabhupada said, she is the secretary. I'm sorry that a lot of my stories are like ego-driven, but anyway. So what else can I share? Okay, another darshan was Pancharatna Prabhu, when he was brahmacārī at the time. He had just come from New York. He goes to Prabhupada's darshan, and he starts talking about what was going on in New York. And at that time, they had just purchased the new building on 55th Street in Manhattan, a prestigious location. But Prabhupada started talking about all these different places in New York that he remembered, like Times Square and Central Park. And he just started naming all these just landmarks in New York. And it was like, I happened to be born in Manhattan, in New York, and I grew up in a suburb of New York. But here I am in Mayapur, and Prabhupada is talking about New York. It was like, it just was so incongruous to me, him talking about my, home in New York, and we're there in Mayapur. It was, yeah, that was amazing. And the fact that Prabhupada was, caring and remembered with affection, because it was his first temple. I mean, this, first success, really, it all came from preaching in New York. Okay. So, okay, another thing that happened in Mayapur was when Prabhupada arrived in that year, January 76, the front gate was there, but wasn't completely finished, painted, looking really nice until January 76. So when Prabhupada arrived, they had a big ribbon across the front gate, and Prabhupada cut the ribbon, and then we all danced down the path to the temple behind Srila Prabhupada. First, I just want to explain, though, that Srila Prabhupada was driving from Calcutta, and it wasn't like nobody had cell phones, of course. And so we really didn't know when Prabhupada was going to arrive. So we started kirtan very early, and by the time he got there, we must have been chanting like 2-3 hours. And I just remember that kirtan being, it was a mixture of the 100 or so devotees who lived there. Bengali men and women who were mostly Bangladesh refugees, and then the Gurukula boys, like the children of the Bangladesh devotees. Well, now they were Mayapur devotees. And then, the handful really of Western devotees. And it was such a mixture of, international devotees. And I really, the more we chanted, the more I felt that, there was, I didn't identify with the body. It was like, we are just spirit souls. We were a big congregation. There was no differences. There was no, like we were in our bodies, And then when Prabhupada came into the temple and gave a very short talk, which, okay, I think I should read, but unfortunately I didn't prepare to do this, but it is an amazing speech because he totally said what I had been feeling. I think I know the page. Hmm. Uh, sorry. Wow. Not going to be as easy as I thought. Okay. Okay, here it is. It was Bhaktivedanta Thakur's aspiration that the Europeans, Americans, and Indians all together dance jubilantly and chant gṛhī. So this temple, Mayapur Chandrodaya Temple, is meant for a transcendental United Nations. What the United Nations has failed to achieve, that will be achieved here by the process recommended by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So you have come from all parts of the world and are living together in this temple. So train these small boys. He was referring to the Gurukula boys. I am very glad, especially to see that the small children from all other countries, of course, there was like 2 foreign boys. So the small children from all other countries and Indian, Bengalis, all together, forgetting their bodily consciousness. That is the greatest achievement in this movement, that everyone forgets the bodily conception of life. Nobody thinks themselves here as European, American, Indian, Hindu, Muslim, Christian. They forget all these designations, and simply they are ecstatic in chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. So kindly, what you have begun, do not break it. Continue it very jubilantly. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the master of Mayapur, he will be very much pleased upon you. And ultimately, you'll go back home, back to Godhead. Thank you very much. Wonderful talk from Srila Prabhupada. So I want to end here and ask for questions, corrections. First, I actually just want to ask, is anybody here a Bengali Gurukuli? No, just thought I'd ask. Okay. I guess it's Sucharya.
The gentleman who asked for the information about the foreign devotees. When Srila Prabhupada said, oh, this is our secretary, when the gentleman asked for the information and Srila Prabhupada replied, oh, she's the secretary. So what did the gentleman say? Did he have a response?
All I remember is just running out of the room myself.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah.
A wonderful class. I really appreciated you writing down what Srila Prabhupada said and reading it to us. Thank you.
Sure. Hare Krishna. Yeah, unfortunately, I wrote my memories about 20 years after Prabhupada left. So, and now it's been 26 years since I wrote the book. So there's much more information in the book that I remember now. Anybody else have questions, comments? Yeah, Katie.
Thank you, Mahamaya, first for sharing your experiences and for speaking on Srila Prabhupada. I would like to ask, can you elaborate any more on your services in deity worship?
What I'm doing now?
What you're doing now,
years?
or what you were doing, how you said that those were
Yeah.
services that you had done
Yeah.
in the past, yes.
Well, until I injured my knees and can't kneel, I used to regularly dress the deities. That's the most ecstatic service ever. So all these years, pretty much wherever I've been. Well, unfortunately in India, we're restricted. Women are restricted from doing that service, but in the West. But I've made outfits, sewn outfits for the deities, and over the last, since 1994, I've been sewing for Chota Radhamadava in Mayapur, who used to ride on the elephant during the Hati processions in Mayapur. Unfortunately, the elephants aren't there, but they still have the Hati procession, even without the Hatis. But I've been sewing for them since 1994, festival deities. Right now in Alachua, for many years, I've been dealing with the deities' clothes in many different ways. But the main thing is that we retire outfits because they get stained or worn out or just old. So we retire outfits and then we sell them. We sell them online. The Radharani Club is something that the devotees in Alachua formed just to serve the deities. Donations to the Radharani Club. They sponsor 2 outfits a year, and 2-day outfits and 2-night outfits every year. And one of the ways we raise funds is by selling the retired outfits and jewelry, so many things. And so myself and my good friend, my god sister Nanda Devi Dasi, she and I had that up, the retired clothes. I've also ordered about 10 outfits to be made here in India for our deities in Alachua. There's there's nothing like doing deity worship. And Does that satisfy your question?
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing, and all glory Srila Prabhupada. Thank you for your service.
Anybody else? Okay. Yeah, bro.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much for sharing your experiences. It's our great fortune. Actually, I was just curious, like when Prabhupada named Mahamaya, you didn't question or like, were you curious about knowing why Prabhupada named like that?
I don't know about the why. I mean, but I could try to briefly tell you, because for years people would say to me, I heard you cried when you got your name. I'm like, no, that did not happen. Okay, this is the story. When I was, joined in Boston, like I said, I changed temples several times. So I was in New York, Iskcon Press. I was with Iskcon Press typesetting, and they moved to New York. There was about 25 brahmacharis were all waiting for Prabhupada to come and get initiated. But he was here in India doing the World Sankirtan Party. And so, they were all thinking, I just want Prabhupada to come as soon as possible. And I'm thinking, I don't want Prabhupada to come for 6 months, because then I'll qualify to be able to get initiated. And that's exactly what happened, actually. But anyway, so in New York, all these brahmacharis would say to each other, what do you think Prabhupada's going to name you? And so what I call the humble pie answer was, oh, Prabhupada's going to name me Maya because I'm always in Maya. But I was never a humble pie devotee. I was the opposite, But in any case, I left New York. I was in Washington, D.C. when we came to New York to get initiated. So the temple president's wife had just had a baby and couldn't travel with us. So we're talking before we go to New York, and, I'm telling her that her husband, the temple president, Damodar Das, had recommended me for initiation. And by the way, this was his test to see if I was ready. He said, who is Krishna? Who is Krishna? That was his question. And I said, oh, he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he said, and who are you? I said, I'm his servant. Okay, you can get initiated. That was the test. Okay, so Damodar's wife, Mriganeti, was saying to me, what do you think Prabhupada's going to name you? And all I could think was that, like I said, humble pie answer that all the ladies in New York were saying. So I said it. I said, Prabhupada's probably going to name me Maya, because I'm always in Maya. So at the initiation, well, first of all, the first time I saw Prabhupada was the day before my initiation, because Prabhupada came to New York, and like I said, maybe I didn't say, but devotees came from all over, and he was initiating 10 people per day for a week. And so since we had missed Prabhupada's arrival, so we kind of got pushed ahead in line. Okay, tomorrow you're going to get initiated. And so seeing Prabhupada the night before, because we weren't having Shrimad Bhagavatam class. That was when they had initiations. So therefore there was an evening class. And I don't remember if it was Bhagavatam or probably it was Bhagavad Gita. So seeing Prabhupada for the first time was kind of a shock to me, because I guess I have no, faith or something, that I couldn't believe that the person who translated Bhagavad Gita was actually on this planet. It just seemed like otherworldly to me. And I just couldn't believe I was going to meet him. So until the moment I saw Srila Prabhupada, I had these doubts that I'm really going to meet him. And when he came through the door of the temple room in Brooklyn, it was such a shock to me that it was like seeing an old friend I hadn't seen in so long. And I so did not expect that at all. Anyway. So the next morning, the devotees sat around the fire. We had to give our beads to Srila Prabhupada. He didn't provide the beads for us. Like no one was coming back and forth to India except for Prabhupada. So actually I still have my original beads. They don't look like Tulsi, but I've been told by Shama Sundar that they are Tulsi because Prabhupada chanted on them, but they actually were from a box of walnut beads that somebody in Baltimore bought. And Washington and Baltimore are very close. When we were driving to New York, we stopped in Baltimore. We counted out 108 beads. Some of the devotees getting initiated from Washington had carved the Krishna bead. It looks like a little Jagannath. And so we just counted out our beads and then strung them up in the Prasadam Hall when we got to New York. 7 times around a Bhagavad Gita was the length of string that we needed. That's how we measured it, so that we could put the beads on and make double knots and have enough string, to finish stringing the beads. So we didn't even see anybody else get initiated. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. But the next morning, 10 people were sitting around the fire. We're chanting on old beads. The new beads were on Prabhupada's microphone stand. They were hanging in order of how we were sitting around the fire. So we knew exactly, or at least I knew exactly when Prabhupada was chanting on my beads. That was ecstatic. So it took him a whole hour to chant on 10 devotees' beads. So we know how fast Prabhupada chanted, 6 minutes around. And the men went first. So with 6 of us from Washington, I didn't know the other devotees. I don't remember what their names were. It's all on database. But I just know when the Washington devotees got initiated. So as he would name people, he would just give not even a whole sentence. He would just give the translation of the name. And then sometimes he would ask about the 4 regular principles, but not everybody stated them all. I think the first few maybe, then after that, he would just say, do you know them? They'd say yes. And then he wouldn't ask them to recite them. So to save time, he'd just go on to the next person. And so the Washington devotees were named Astarath, Saptarath, Dasarath. And each one, he would say, one who drives a chariot in 9 directions, one who drives a chariot in 10 directions. Like that. That was it. And even Dasarath, 10, what? It doesn't say he's the father of Lord Ram even. And then there was Pancharatna Prabhu. So he was connected to the men's names because the number, right? Because Pancha connects with all the other numbers. And then, and after all the men got their names, then there was three women. One was a little girl who was, I think, only 12, but I think in my book I said she was 16. I don't remember how old she was, but she was a little girl with a, typical blonde hair, blue eyes, beautiful face, and Prabhupada named her Shashimukhi, moon face. Right? And then he named Saptarath's wife Hemalata. I don't know if I was the last one, but I just remember going up to the front to Srila Prabhupada, and Prabhupada's servant Aravinda had the list of names, and he would tell them to Prabhupada. But he wasn't speaking in the microphone, so only people very close could hear. So I heard him say my name before Prabhupada said it. So I was already in a state of shock, And then when Prabhupada said the name, it was like everybody went, ah, And then Prabhupada started laughing. So everybody cracked up. Everybody was laughing. And when it died down, he said, illusory energy. He said, Mahamaya, illusory energy. Okay, I should give you the exact words because it felt like he was talking for half an hour because he, had given just such a brief, description, translation of the other names. And then for me, it felt like he talked for half an hour. So, I know what that's, okay. He asked the little girl, did she chant around? She said 16. So she was only 12. Yeah. Okay. He said, so illusory energy is not bad. Just like there are phases of the moon, the illusory energy is another phase of Radharani. Those who do not want to serve Krishna, for them, the illusory energy is there. And then, of course, he said, do you know the rules? I said, yes. So, yeah.
What's the name for Radharani?
Indirectly, a name of her energy. Yeah. But there's so many places in the scriptures where Mahamaya is compared to Yogamaya. One is like iron, the other is like gold. He did name a devotee Yogamaya either the day before or the day after. And he also named 2 children, unfortunately, 2 little girls whose parents unfortunately didn't stay around very long, but 2 little girls who lived in LA. He named them Mahamaya and Yogamaya. But, when people, I knew them actually briefly, but they actually were called Maha and Yoga. They cut the Maya out. Does that answer your question? More than you expected, even.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? It's actually 9:00. Time for prasadam. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Krishna.
What was your legal name?
It was Emily. It had nothing to do.
Emily.
Yeah. Yeah. None of the names back then had, not none, but very rarely connected to our legal names. Yeah. In the Leela Rija, it says 200 devotees got initiated that week, but some were first and some were second. I don't know if it really was 200. I think it's a little bit of an exaggeration. Hare Krishna.